Breaking news coming in. Arun Jaitley has penned a new blog, and in this blog he has attacked the Tukde gang, questioning who is really threatening human rights in Kashmir. Joining me now is Niranjan live. Niranjan, over to you.
Well, Finance Minister Arun Jaitley, Union Minister, has tweeted on, he's spoken about a range of issues. Now, the crux of the article is on who's threatening human rights. He talks about how Indian parliamentary democracy is facing threats from within. Now, he talks about the activities of insurgent organizations in his blog that has just been tweeted by the Union Minister. He says, amongst the jihadis and the separatists, there are many who are trained by our Western neighbor and actively financed by it. The prime objective is to create disaffection against the Indian state. They are active in few parts of India, but predominantly the state of Jammu and Kashmir. Some local youth have also joined them. Now, the second group is Maoist insurgent, and Jaitley goes on to talk about Maoist insurgency. But most importantly, he goes on to talk about who is threatening human rights of the citizen. And he talks about the different massacre and the historical context of Kashmir and who should be really blamed. But I think the news point in this entire article is this paragraph and the chapter where he talks about the emergence and evolution of human rights organizations. So the entire NGO lobby, the Tukde gang, the target of Union Minister Arun Jaitley's blog. He says human rights organizations were conventionally launched in the countries which were either oppressed by dictatorship or were under the oppression of foreign rule. Civil liberties movement had a very important role to play. This is true of India also. Then he goes on to talk about Jayaprakash Narayan and the People's Union for Civil Liberties. And the most important mention is here. He says these activists were always in touch with the underground Maoist leaders. They acted as their communication channel. They would rationalize Maoist violence even in the media by arguing that the root cause of the violence needs to be addressed. The media was guilty of giving them disproportionate coverage. In the last few years, they expanded their ideological dissimilarity. The only thing common between them was violence, overthrow of the constitutional order, and secessionism. That is the breakup of India. Recent evidence suggests that they are trying to rope in some misguided Dalit activists into their fold. This became publicly apparent after the Tukde agitation in the Jawaharlal Nehru University and the events that followed in Hyderabad thereafter. Now, he goes on to talk about the Tukde gang, break into their defense. He also makes a mention of the Congress party. He says, what is the human rights focus of these organizations? He goes on to talk about Rahul Gandhi. He says, first, their ability to coordinate with opinion makers in the Western world and with the global human rights organizations has to be recognized. He says, secondly, even though the Congress party historically and ideologically would have been opposed to these groups, they have earned a sympathy in Rahul Gandhi's heart. He had no qualms about joining those who raised subversive slogans at JNU and Hyderabad. With this initial success, the others amongst the so-called Federal Front have forgotten the dangers of these groups to India and Indian democracy. He speaks about the political adventurists in parties like AAP, Trinamool and the like only look for political opportunity in these groups. These human rights organizations are an overground face of the underground. Overground face of the underground. He says in the system that they believe in, there is no place for life, liberty, equality and free speech. In fact, there is no space for election or parliamentary democracy. A very scathing blog by Arun Jaitley. He signs off by saying our policy has to be save the human rights of every Indian, be it a tribal or a Kashmiri from separatists. Two news points that you can take away from this. One, of course, the mention of the Tukde gang. Second, the mention of Rahul Gandhi and how these so-called human rights lobbies have found a soft corner in Rahul Gandhi's heart, and he's taking an ideologically opposite position of what the Congress party would have ideally taken over the years.
Absolutely, Niranjan, breaking down the details of Arun Jaitley's latest blog. Arun Jaitley says in his blog, in the state of Jammu and Kashmir, who is really threatening the human rights of the citizens? The entire Kashmiri Pandit community has been banished from the state. Niranjan, he also names two ideological groups that are involved in insurgency and terrorism. Primarily, he attacks, again, the terrorists who are trained by India's Western neighbor and financed by Pakistan as well.
Well, that's correct. If you look at the link that Arun Jaitley is trying to make, he tries to draw a link between, the human rights activists and what they're fighting for. Essentially, they're fighting for a cause which is lost, because he says insurgent organizations are those who are trained by the Western neighbor, and then he makes that link from Pakistan to the Tukde gang, which is giving them ideological backing on some front, especially on the Maoist front. He talks about how ideologically the Tukde gang has been agitating and supporting some of these groups. Now he says this, read between the lines, he says the media was guilty of giving them disproportionate coverage. In the last few years, they expanded their strategy and started coordinating with jihadis and separatists, notwithstanding their ideological dissimilarity. The only thing common between them was violence, overthrow of the constitutional order and secessionism. That is the breakup of India. Recent evidence suggests that they are trying to rope in some misguided Dalit activists into their fold. This became publicly apparent after the Tukde agitation in the Jawaharlal Nehru University and the events which followed in Hyderabad thereafter. Now look at how he draws Rahul Gandhi into this. In effect, you can just focus on this part, and I'm just going to try and highlight this part for all our viewers, where Arun Jaitley makes a mention of Rahul Gandhi and also the Trinamool Congress and Aam Aadmi Party, which seem to have gone soft. If I can just highlight some of these quotes, you can just look at this. He says, even though the Congress Party historically and ideologically would have been opposed to these groups, they have earned a sympathy. He says they have earned a sympathy in Rahul Gandhi's heart. He had no qualms about joining those who raised subversive slogans at JNU and Hyderabad. With this initial success, the others amongst the so-called Federal Front have forgotten the dangers of these groups to India and Indian democracy. One, targeting Rahul Gandhi. Second, targeting the Federal Front. And he says the political adventurists in parties like AAP. Key point, political adventurists in parties like AAP, Trinamool Congress and the like, only look for a political opportunity in these groups. And he's talking about groups like the Tukde gang and all those so-called NGOs who are giving ideological support to some of these extremist groups and also to Maoists, most recently whose role has been uncovered in the Bhima Koregaon violence.
Absolutely, Niranjan, stay with us. Also, you are highlighting key areas of Arun Jaitley's blog. Let me also read out a portion in which he addresses the human rights issue in Jammu and Kashmir, isn't it? And he says, I'm quoting Arun Jaitley here, in the last few years, most innocent citizens that the terrorists are killing in the valley are fellow Kashmiri themselves. In fact, one of the worst victims of Pakistan's misconceived Kashmir policy has been the residents of Kashmir Valley. In the region, on the strength of its natural beauty and agriculture, it has the potential of being the wealthiest per capita state in the country. The terrorists have destroyed it. For the past 3 years, the terrorists have upped their activities in the months of April, May and June so that the economic lifestyle of the valley suffers in the tourism season. They terrorize courts, they kill editors, they kill innocent citizens, and they do not allow any alternate religion to be practiced. So who is threatening human rights of the citizens of Kashmir? It is obvious that it is the terrorists and the jihadis who have done it. Niranjan, this is also a strong reply to the United Nations report. Obviously, isn't it? India refuted that report in the United Nations. Republic TV exposed how Pak proxies were behind that United Nations report on human rights abuse in Jammu and Kashmir. And Arun Jaitley again attacking the terrorists sponsored by Pakistan of destroying the way of life in Jammu and Kashmir and abusing human rights there.
Well, that's correct. It comes on the back of course, the United Nations Human Rights Council report on Kashmir. And then he talks about, of course, he draws the link from the UNHRC to extremist groups and the terror that has been conveniently edited from the UN report on Kashmir. But I think the most important talking point and the news point this morning is where he draws in Rahul Gandhi. He talks about the Tukde gang, and then he says they've earned a sympathy in Rahul Gandhi's heart. And remember, this is coming on a day when Congress is facing flack from the BJP for earning praise from the Lashkar-e-Toiba. Now he's also mentioning that. He says Rahul Gandhi had no qualms about joining those who raised subversive slogans. Now remember, all of this is key in the context of the story that we're doing of Lashkar backing Congress, because this is exactly the attitude and the approach of the Congress party which has earned them the praise of the Lashkar-e-Toiba, because they may have gone soft and in turn questioning the forces and the government, which is exactly what the Tukde gang does. And probably that association has raised questions, and the reason why Pakistan has picked it up, the reason why two Congress leaders have almost echoed Pakistan, and Pakistan is happy that Congress leaders are backing them. Even terrorist groups like Lashkar-e-Toiba last evening issuing a statement. And I think Ghanshyam Tiwari is on the phone line. Ghanshyam, on a day when you have the Lashkar-e-Toiba praising the Congress party and one of its leaders saying that we are of the same opinion as the Congress party, I think, in the larger context,